I wanted to share some reflections from Nicoll from psychological commentaries on the teachings of Gurdjieff and Ouspensky from Volume 5. And this is some reflections on self-observation that he made back in April 18th, 1953. When you are ill, the personality is not so active, or should not be. Unless you are crystallized in negative states, you have a chance to observe yourself from a certain angle. Different voices talk in you. You can actually hear them. These are different eyes. Out of a job for the time being and idling about the city of yourself, if you're very ill, these cease and the city is quiet. This is when the instinctive center is drawing upon every source of energy for its own use, as in war. A sign that you're recovering may be that amusing eyes reappear and you hear them talking. So I'm Roach, I'm Mark Roach, and I'm here to bring you a different perspective. And this is a perspective really that I'm delivering from Nicoll and Gurdjieff and Ouspensky for your consideration. Let me continue. A humorous view of oneself seems medicine of high order, used by the instinctive center. As regards symptoms and sympathy, many things can be noticed. Many eyes desire sympathy, while others do not like it. Certainly the desire for sympathy lurks behind a symptom. This may not be apparent until a show of sympathy is expected and not given. Then some eyes, as it were waiting to feel aggrieved, become negative and indignant amongst themselves. This may keep the symptom going. Symptoms and sympathy can stand in a complicated relationship to each other. To be told you are lucky, you are not worse, has a mixed effect on different eyes. Also, to one's childish eye, a symptom like a feather in one's cap. One does not wish to give up one's suffering. Certain eyes do not wish to give up their suffering. Sometimes the observation of a symptom may shorten its duration if it is done impersonally, that is, from the observing eye. But not so if this is self-pitying from neighboring eyes, for then a swarm of minor symptoms may enter consciousness, all chattering away. It is then necessary to practice an inner stop decisively. With the increasing light that comes from impersonal self-observation, it is extraordinary to see how much of what we say and do springs from unappeased resentments, recent and old, and how little we know it. Taken back in time, in illness, we see them all standing out like figures caught in the searchlight. This leads me to the following reflection. One sees that resentments are bound to rankle as long as we lead a half-life of man asleep. Mechanically, we are one-sided. We do not see the other person in ourselves and ourselves in the other person, and cancel out our resentment by this method to which I so often call your attention. We see the other person, but not ourselves simultaneously, which is only a half of the whole matter and renders so much of life insoluble. In this work, we have to find and fit the missing half on. Then the rankling points are sheathed. It is like fitting the two edges of a cracked plate. The jutting out bits fit exactly into the opposite bits. In this, you are helped eventually. So you are in everything in the work once you truly begin from your own understanding to work at seeing yourself and the other person simultaneously. As it were one person, you and him, and he and you. This takes many periods of work and integrity, both in observation and remembering together, with periods of relaxing and amusement. Let me say here that this is to and fro movement, contraction and expansion, systole and diastole. This is necessary work for all sides of our work. A heart always in contraction, like systole, would be useless. Moreover, a valve is needed to prevent what flows in from flowing back again. If you work and then always get negative, you have no one-way valve. Your psychological heart is without a valve and is so, it's rendered useless. It needs a valve that opens and shuts, that lets in and prevents letting out. Without a valve, what you gain is taken away from you in the inevitable swing of the opposites. So that in your moments of relaxation and pleasure, you must be careful to be awake of what used to work and then go, let it go. Does it flare up and cause depression? Something more resolute and intelligent is required of everyone in this work. Now, without self-observation, no change of self is possible. We do hate to observe ourselves. Consider how you rarely do it, maybe never. Amongst other things, only the light of increasing consciousness shed by self-observation and work memory can cure us of the strange illness of being half of what we really are. Otherwise, the other half of us remains in the darkness permanently. This strange unnoticed illness, however, serves the purpose of organic life or nature. The sensitive living film that covers the earth and demands it to be replenished relentlessly because we then seek the other half of ourselves in the opposite sex. This means that the side of us which is not in our consciousness and so in darkness is seen as if it's outside of us, in a person quite different from us, often mysterious and fascinating, although actually ordinary. This acts either in one or the other way. The woman feels fascinated by the man or the man by the woman, but not mutually, it would seem. Mutual attraction is not fascination. Fascination is based on illusion. When the man becomes increasingly conscious of the woman in himself, he cannot fall in love. He cannot be fascinated, but he can be attracted. This is the same with the woman. I suppose the word infatuation can be substituted for fascination, but whichever word you use, the meaning is a powerful enchantment. We know from previous studies of the work that when we are identified, we cannot see a thing right as it really is. There are degrees of identification. We can be less or more identified. In the fourth state of consciousness, called objective consciousness, we see things as they really are. That, of course, includes ourselves. We would see ourselves and others as we and they really are. The state of being in love would be unknown since it characterizes half people. As long as a man is in love, relationship is impossible. Now, personality is the function of relationship to the external world. It is what relates you to things. If you have a weak, untrained personality, your relationship to the external world is a weak one. And you're probably nuanced to others. You're probably a nuisance to others. This is the same as saying that your function of relationship to the external world is weak. So we will now touch briefly on the meaning of soul. The soul is the function of relationship to higher centers. The soul should be turned inwards, but ordinarily it is turned outwards towards some object or person in the world of the senses and remains undeveloped. This should not be. For example, a man should not get his soul entangled in a woman. People say he is under the power of a woman, but he is really under the power of his own soul. You must understand that the world of the senses and the external world are the same. The personality gives us no relationship to the higher centers or to our inner world. It is turned outwards to external life. This work seeks to develop a relationship to what lies hidden in us. The development of an observing eye begins to turn the soul away from the senses, as it does also work against mechanicalness. It turns inward. The undeveloped soul does not wish in the least to perform its proper function. It wants to go on looking out of the window. Intractable things like naughty children and need patience. The soul acting in the self-love possesses us. That totally misunderstood saying, "In your patience possess ye your souls," from Luke 21:19, properly translated is, "It is by patience that you will secure possession of your souls." When the soul turns round, it finds its proper place and begins to exercise its proper function inwardly, which have to do with the reception of meaning from higher centers. This personality cannot receive messages from higher centers, and if it did, could not understand them because the language of higher center has nothing of the time and space in it, and is therefore not logical as we understand logic. It is not formatory, but the soul can receive messages and new meanings. In the case of a man, the soul is female. In the case of a woman, it is male. A superficial shadow person's soul is not developed. All sorts of traps and pitfalls center on these simple facts. One thing, at least, can be understood here, and that is that a man successful in external life cannot produce straight on in the same way of developing a relationship to the higher centers, nor can a woman. With the man or the woman, a new start has to be made, and in fact, a reversal, and quite new ideas taken in and thought about, and quite new kinds of efforts made. But one of the great difficulties is to wrestle the soul away from being identified with the things of life. When it is so identified, it is the point of the greatest intensity entering into the identification that makes it difficult to break. When, through self-observation, which is observation of one's inner world and other work, the soul is partly turned round away from the other things of external life and its appetites and its commerce with inferior eyes, it may begin to pick up meaning from the higher levels and develop. If it remains glued to the senses, as, say, to a person, this will not happen. It will be unable to change its direction. The person lives and dies, misses the mark. He has not completed himself. But if a man or a woman becomes related both to the external and internal worlds, all right, they're not half men or half women any longer. They're completed. They're whole men and whole women. When the rich young man asked how he could enter into eternal life, Christ said, if thou wouldst become complete, sell what thou hast and follow me. That was in Matthew 24, verse 21. Do you imagine this merely insists that he had to walk about trailing in the dust after Christ? No. It meant he had to undergo a completely new development, a new direction inwardly, making passive all he had got so far by counting it as if it had no value. He seems to have had a good opinion of himself. I'm Roach, Mark Roach, wishing you all the best.